Well, today we're going to have a look at a soil pit. And but first of all, I'd like to talk a little bit about Cabernet and some about my experience over the last 16 years of being at Pascual Toso. And so when I came to Argentina in 1989. Actually, my first visit was before that. It was 1988 when I first came here, and I met Nicholas Catena at that time, and then we began working together in '89. And over the course of that time, I was also making trips to Bianchi Winery, where I was consulting, and I would drive through this highway that you came in on today. And this is the area that I saw would look most interesting to me for growing Cabernet Sauvignon. And it's mainly because, as you may have noticed, they were digging up the road as you came through, and you see all the rocks. We're going to see in the soil pit, you don't have to look even into the pit to see the soils. You can see it's largely composed of rock. And of course we know that Cabernet loves well-drained soils, dry feet, and it likes low vigor sites. So here, as you can see, there's not a lot of organic material in the soil, and that really does the job when it comes to regulating the vigor of the plant. Cabernet Sauvignon, of course, is a vine that likes to grow. It's said to be a cross of Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon Blanc. Well, it has these compounds called pyrazines, and they give a greenness to the wine that typically is considered unpleasant. So you need a combination of low vigor soils so that basically the vine doesn't put all the energy into the vine and actually thinks about maturing its fruit so it can survive into the next year. And so we want to stress the vine for that reason. Here in Mendoza, essentially nothing really grows without irrigation. Except for this year, and maybe a few others in my experience over the course of X number, almost 26 or 27 years in Argentina, everything needs to be irrigated because annually the rainfall mattered only 8 inches. Of course, we had 8 inches the last weekend. Highly irregular weather this year. But generally speaking, nothing agriculturally would survive very long here without some form of irrigation. And when I first came to Argentina, drip irrigation didn't exist. So it was only possible to irrigate the vineyard via flooding it or furrow irrigation. Also at that time, in the late 1980s, most vineyards were planted on ungrafted, or what we'd call Pied Franco here, native roots. And that was possible even though there is phylloxera in Mendoza. It's possible, and also there's nematodes, by flooding to control those beasts, if you will. And as a matter of course, we could survive on native rootstock. But today with drip irrigation, and particularly with new plantings in the Valle de Uco, many of the rootstocks have to be now ungrafted, phylloxera-resistant roots. But anyway, getting back to what I wanted to say is that when I first came here and started passing back and forth, we were basically looking for great sites. And I was particularly interested in Cabernet because that was my experience before I really woke up to the possibility of Malbec. And so I was looking for high-quality Cabernet sites. Where we started with Catena's project, everything here started in the south, in the east of Mendoza. The Toso family is one of several families, the Catenas, the Zucardis, and others, that came in the late 1880s, and they planted, I suppose, primarily in these regions because it was easy access to the major market, rather than going to the Valle de Uco, which has only been developed, let's say, in the last 15 to 18 years. So that was all really new territory that's up toward the mountains that way. So this was a traditional region. And so that's where I really started my first search for Cabernet Sauvignon. And then I may be getting ahead of myself a little bit by saying this, but I never imagined that I would have the good fortune of meeting Enrique and Mario Toso. But in I think it was 1999, Enrique, that we, December. I don't know if we'll show you the room where the meeting took place. I hope so. It's a small room, and you can see the girth of Enrique and basically Mario's no different, and they put me in this room between the two of them, and they made me a proposition I couldn't refuse. Oh yeah, I remember that too. Well, what they didn't know is that I was already pretty excited about the opportunity to work at a site like this. So we'll talk more this afternoon. We'll get together and talk about the ageability and taste some wines and look at Toso's development over the past years. But right now, I just simply want to say that one of the reasons this is a great area for Cabernet Sauvignon, apart from the soils, the great drainage, these alluvial soils, you can see the rocks are rounded. So that means great drainage. Actually, everything is relative, right? And so when you think about rocks, and they say, well, you know, these areas to the east are typically heavier soils. And as you go higher into the Andes or higher under the shoulders, those soils are better drained. But when you go over to Chile, I mean, frankly, even the soils that are perhaps, with a few exceptions, they have much heavier soils. All through the Central Valley of Chile is heavy clays, very deep soils. And it's only when you get on the shoulders of the Andes, but the Andes over there are so steep that you can't really get on them very easily. So we're blessed here in Argentina. There's many jokes about how we're blessed.
The right side of the Andes.
But we're on the right side of the Andes, yes. I can say that when I'm on this side of the Andes. But it's an amazing terroir in the sense that off the Andes you have 30 kilometers or 40 kilometers or 50 kilometers of these very gradual, almost like a plane, but it has a slope to it. And if we happen to get up there and take a look down, you can just see this steady descent off the Andes that makes it very plantable. Here the soils are fairly uniform across the great distances. In Chile and even in California, there's much more variability. You've got mini microsites, if you will, because every 2 or 3 vines, the soils change. You can imagine how challenging that is to grow high quality grapes in a situation like that. So when we may walk a row. I don't know if we'll go that far or not, but you'll notice that there's great consistency for the most part down the row. In Cabernet, that's essential. Maybe not so critical in other varieties, but for Cabernet, it's crucial. And the main reason for that is simple. I mentioned earlier the pyrazines or the green notes that you see in Cabernet. If one cluster on the vine is, let's say, delayed in maturity and another one is advanced, which one do you pick? And how do you know which one to pick? Because if you don't pick if it's not ripe, well, it's green tasting, and that's undesirable. And then if another one on the same vine or a few vines is already ripe or even could be overripe, then you have kind of a mishmash. Pinot Noir can tolerate that. Chardonnay can tolerate Syrah. Malbec, particularly forgiving, but Cabernet is totally unforgiving. You need uniformity. You want every cluster on the vine to be at the same level or at the same place. It's sort of like in the movie Gladiator, where Russell Crowe says, keep the line, hold the line, and stay with me. That's what you're thinking when you're with the Cabernet Vineyard. You want to hold the line. You want them all to come to the same place at the same time. So this is crucial. And so it's much more challenging in very complicated sites to be able to do that. I think I'll just leave it at that with these remarks, maybe we should go over and visit this soil pit. And I don't know if it's set up so that you can walk down into it and walk out of it at the other side. We'll get over there and see. We can walk through it?
Yeah.
Great. Get right down into it. All right, thank you.